One change to every single killer in DBD. Let's do it. Kings and queens, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. We're going to be making one significant change to every single killer. Let me know what changes you guys would make to some of these killers in the comments down below. And with that being said, let's jump straight into it. Trapper is first on the list. You guys know that I am a Trapper main. Overall, Trapper could definitely use some significant buffs to his base kit to make him a lot better and more viable, especially in today's climate. I feel like if there was a chance to get injured every time you disarm the trap, even if it was a small chance, a small percentage for this to happen, it would be quite good. Whether that's 5 or 10%, kind of giving his eerie bloody coil a little bit more into the base kit, working in there, so survivors that are just going around disarming the traps will have a more difficult time and might think twice if they want to do that. And sometimes if they're disarming a trap right in front of you and they get injured, it could be a nice little GG. I think that would be a quite good buff. In previous episodes, we said that if he carried more traps, things like that, it would be nicer. Those things have been added where he can now carry 2 traps, and you can run add-ons to technically start with all of your traps. So that's a significant change that I would make. Next up on the list is the Wraith. Wraith is pretty fun to play, and one of the add-ons that I find myself using quite often is the Bone Clapper add-on, and this basically makes it so that the Wailing Bell is map wide anytime you are cloaking or uncloaking. I believe that if this was base kit, it would make the Wraith significantly better, as you'll have that slot to use for other great add-ons for him. I think this would just be a really cool thing for them to do, and then you have the option, if you want no Wailing Bell at all, to then use the ultra rare. Overall, I think that would be a pretty significant buff to him and make him quite nice. Next up on the list is the Hillbilly. I think the best thing that Hillbilly can use is a little bit changes to his add-ons, specifically giving him some more cooldown add-ons. When they initially introduced the overheat mechanic, it was a big head scratcher. That wasn't necessarily an issue with Hillbilly, and since then people have really not used Hillbilly whatsoever, and he's significantly worse than he's been. I think reintroducing cooldown add-ons would be really significant, as there's a lot of lackluster add-ons for him, and it would be quite nice overall to see the old school Hillbilly make a return. Next on the list is the Nurse, and prior to making this video, the only thing I would say with the Nurse was to adjust her PTP add-ons, and those are some of the cracked ones with 7 blinks. So far, that has been changed, and that was pretty much the only thing I was recommending to be changed. So as of now, I would say Nurse is in an alright spot. We'll leave her be for now and see exactly what happens when we get some more time playing her and there's more people seeing what she can do. Then I think we can revisit her and make some good changes. Prior to this, we also said that making it so those extremely good perks on her don't count as a basic attack, i.e. Haunted Ground, Devourer, Hope, Starstruck, etc. They no longer do that, so that is a step in the right direction. So we'll see what eventually happens with the Nurse in the future and revisit at a later time. Next on the list is the Huntress, and I think a little bit of a no-brainer is to make it so that she's a little bit faster when she's out of hatchets. I think this would introduce some really awesome gameplay, as survivors would be guessing sometimes if you're actually going to commit to chasing them around a pallet, or if you have more hatchets and, you know, you're just gonna raise a hatchet and go. One of the biggest mind games against the Huntress is just to wait at a pallet. She then pulls up the hatchet, you continue to run. By the time she gets the hatchet ready, you're already around the corner. So if you made it so it's base kit where she's a little bit faster, maybe 112, 113 when she's out of hatchets, it could introduce a little bit more mind games for both the Huntress and the survivors, which I think could make for some awesome gameplay. Hey, by the way, if you're enjoying this video, make sure you leave a like down below, and make sure you tell me what changes you would make to your killer main or anybody in general. Also, big shout out to our Twitch channel. We're back, we're streaming, we're on it. I'd love to have you guys there. We're on the push for 100 concurrent viewers. You guys can make the difference. Just one of you guys coming out really means the world to me. So please, I'm begging you, head over to Twitch and follow if we're not live. And if we're live, say hello. All right, let's continue. Next on the list is Myers, and I can't really put my finger on just one change I would make to Myers, because realistically there's so much that you could do, because I think he's such a lackluster killer. Nonetheless, I would rework his add-ons overall. that's a little bit more than just one fix. So if I had to just do one fix, and we're not talking about add-ons, I would make it so that his tier 1 goes a lot faster. It's just really insignificant when you're in tier 1. There's nothing going on, and unless you're doing a specific build like seeing through the walls or things like that, there's no point in being tier 1. So make that go a little bit faster. You know, a good change to this would make it so that it is maybe half of the time that it takes to get out of tier 1, so you can instantly get into tier 2 and start the stocking process. Next on the list is the Hag, and I feel like Hag is one of the more underrated killers. She is extremely good and extremely powerful, and I feel like a lot of people don't play her for some odd reason. The only change that I would realistically give to the Hag, because I think she's in a comfortable position, is making it so that you can't place too many traps under the person that is hooked. This is one of the strategies that most Hag players do, including myself, because it is quite viable. But if you're placing like 3, 4, 5 traps underneath one person that's hooked, it's a little bit excessive. So maybe if there was a nice specific range for that, or limit the amount that you can do in a certain radius on a hooked survivor, it would be quite nice to help with a lot of the proxy camping, essentially, without actually proxy camping. If you were to make a buff and you wanted to argue the other side, I think one of the things that you could look into is making it so that on base she has more range with teleporting to her traps. This is one of the things that if you're struggling with, I run the add-on to essentially increase the range. Obviously, values would be adjusted if that were the case, and I think if you are looking for a buff, that would be a good one. And if you are looking for a nerf, it would be so that you can't place too many traps underneath a hooked survivor. Either way, Hag, I think, is one of the most underrated killers that is super good, so that's why I gave her both a buff and a nerf, and you can choose which one and one change you would make for her. Next on the list is the Doctor. This is something that I've spoken about quite a lot in our videos, and that's having an AI that actually walks around as the Doctor when you're in tier 3 madness. I think this would be super cool, and with bots coming into the game, I don't think it'll be necessarily too difficult to do this. Even if you have the bots swing or something like that, it would be so significant having survivors running and vaulting and, you know, tossing pallets against a Doctor that's not actually the Doctor. How cool would that be, just seeing maybe 2 or 3 Doctors running around the map and the survivor's like, is that real? Is that not real? Rather than them just standing there being stagnant and you're like, oh yeah, that's just them. It would be super cool. I would like to see something like that, and I think it can make for some really interesting gameplay. Next on the list is Bubba. I think this one is quite obvious what we would need to change with Bubba, and that's just the collision hitboxes. There's been so many times that I walk around and I'm using my chainsaw and I get stuck on some random invisible object, maybe a tiny twig, anything like that, and I'm just like, ah, this is a pain. If you're about to get a survivor and maybe they turn the corner around a vault, or not a vault, a loop, and you know, you turn it just a little bit, tiny bit too close to something that's just sticking out, it's not really the best feeling. So I think if those hitboxes were smoothened out a little bit, it would be quite good, and when you actually fully hit something, it would be a lot better, and I think that would be a pretty good change for him. Next on the list is Freddy. Now, Freddy used to be a really good killer back in the days, and the last time we kind of checked, he did have a high kill rate. Nowadays, that's not really the case. I think some of the best things that you could do for Freddy is just fixing his add-ons. Again, that's a little bit of a cop-out answer, so I will give you another answer, and that's making his fake pallets and puddles into his base kit. I know this might be a little bit excessive, but puddles are quite easy to avoid and people don't really care too much about them, and pallets are quite underused. I feel like I'm one of the only people that actually use dream pallets while playing Freddy, so I don't see why not. You can switch between the powers similar how you switch between your powers with other killers, and you can have pallets and, you know, these snares around the map. I think it would be quite perfect. Imagine setting up a snare into a pallet, someone runs in a snare, they drop the fake pallet, and then you're like double wombo combo. I think that'd be really awesome, and hopefully that's something they do. Next on the list is the pig, and you know, I always said that the pig needs some really good buffs, but a lot of people have told me that I'm just not playing pig correctly. I still truly believe she's one of the weaker killers in the game, but people argue otherwise. Regardless, I think one of the cool changes that they could do is to make the ambush attacks, the add-on specifically combat straps, etc., anything that increases the range and the time and makes it faster, would be good just to add it on her base kit. It seems that her ambush attack is a little bit underutilized against experienced players. If you crouch, the survivors will just run to a different location, as it's quite easy to avoid that. So if you have something like combat traps, things like that, by the time they're trying to avoid you, you still might be able to catch up with them. And I think that could significantly boost how well the pig performs. Next up on the list is the clown, and I think one of the coolest things that we could see for clown is if we had instant swap bottles. I've seen a bug recently with the twins, and I know when is there not a bug with the twins? It seems like there's bugs going on with them forever. Anyways, I digress. And the bug essentially was to instantly swap between Victor and Charlotte, and this just made them feel so much smooth and so much better. I think clown can use a similar treatment. If you can instantly swap between those bottles, click the button, boom, you're swapped. And I think it would really make it more essential and have a higher utilization rate of switching between the bottles and quickly actually making some high-level skill gameplay where you could toss the yellow bottle to speed you up and then quickly swap to the purple bottles. That like 1 to 1.5 second delay really kills some of the momentum, and I think doing something like that could be quite good. Next on the list is the Spirit. I think Spirit overall at the moment, she's quite fine. I think a lot of people actually backed off from Spirit the last time she had some of her add-ons reworked. However, a good Spirit player would still dominate with some of the best add-ons, and I'm sure you guys could think of what the best add-ons are for her. So just nerf those a little bit. Nerf her super duper strong add-ons, and I think it will make everyone's life a lot easier. So that's a change that I would make to the Spirit. Legion is on the list next, and similarly to Spirit, I think the OP add-on combinations just need to go. I've been running Mural Sketch and pills, or Never Sleep pills, for such a long time, and I'm not gonna lie to you, these matches literally never end, they're super boring, and I never lose them. It is so easy, you just run around, you can see everybody, every time you stab somebody, you get faster progressively, and there's not much the survivors can do. By the time they mend, you can go back to them and hit them again, and I think this combination is just through the roof. Nobody really realizes that because not too many people play against the Legion, and if you do, they might be running something else. But if this catches wind and people start using it excessively, you're gonna hear everybody crying about it, so nerf it before it gets too out of hand. Next on the list is the Plague, and I think that takes us about halfway on the list, and honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like this is a cop-out, but I have nothing for Plague. I think Plague is just in the perfect spot in the game. One of the most balanced killers where if you play your cards right, you'll do good. If you don't, then you'll do bad. The only change I had prior to her was to make it so that a fountain naturally spawns for you so you can use your power and people can kind of hold that hostage essentially so you can't use your power, but they changed that and you can run apples, things like that, and add-ons to help you. So realistically, no changes to the Plague. She's fine. Ghostface is next. I think this one is blightingly obvious. Fix the way that he's been detected. I mean, there's so many times where I'm looking directly at him and I've seen the videos where people are like, put him in this side of your screen. I do all of that and it doesn't work. Then there's so many times that I play as the killer and people are like behind a wall and I'm getting kicked out of my power. If they can fix that and make that better or make it more apparent to everybody what needs to happen and smooth that out, I think it will be a lot nicer to play. Demogorgon is next up on the list, and as much as we love Demogorgon, I feel like he's just quite boring. Spice up his add-ons so you can have more variety of gameplay rather than just, hey, we can tunnel faster or that's it. I mean, there's not too much good things going on with his add-ons. Spice it up, make it better, and I think that'll be really good for him. Oni is next on the list, and the change that I have for the Oni is that you don't lose your blood when you down somebody. I feel like with the anti-slugging system eventually coming into the game, this would be quite good. Obviously, with anti-slugging in the game now, or slugging, I should say, where you could just slug and slug and slug and the game is over, that's quite boring, so you don't want to give him that much of a buff. But if they fully go through with the anti-slugging mechanic, make it so that he doesn't lose any bit of progress when he downs somebody while in his dash. I think that'll be pretty fair, so let's see what they do. Deathslinger is next on the list, and I really missed the ADS speed time. It was so much fun and so nice when you could just instantly ADS shoot Survivor. Obviously, that doesn't lead to a lot of counterplay, but I do feel like they could improve on the ADS speed quite a bit. It is very slow in my opinion, and with practice, yes, you can get a little bit better with him, but overall, it's just kind of meh. I think if they increase the ADS speed time just a little bit, it would be quite nice. Pyramid Head is next on the list. And to be honest, Pyramid Head is an alright killer. I feel like one of the biggest downsides to him is the dragging of his sword. I just feel like it takes so long when you're dragging the sword, and then if you have to lift it back up to then go hit somebody. That was a nice little mind game that you could do with the survivors. It just takes such a long time to go back into everything. Hopefully they can fix that moving forward to make it feel a lot smoother. Obviously don't make it as crazy as it was where you could almost instantly do it, but fix it so that you can actually turn corners, do things. Maybe if you want to use your power quickly, do that as well, and then carry on with your day. Up next on the list is the Blight. Blight definitely needs a nerf with his ring add-on. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that that add-on needs to be changed. If you're looking for something just to help him as is, and you don't really care about the ring change, I feel like fixing some of the collisions would be good. Sometimes I'm running into a tree and it just pushes me to the side. Sometimes I'm doing the same thing and then it actually hits. So, hopefully they can work on that and make it a bit more apparent what works and what doesn't work. Next on the list is the twins, and we spoke about them a little bit earlier. I think holding Victor hostage should be a little bit more punishing. You know, survivors can basically take Victor for 30, 45 seconds, and there's not much that you can do about it, which completely negates your power, and then you're either forced to chase that survivor, which sometimes you don't want to because it's not the most tactical thing to do, and it really can hinder your gameplay at some point. It would be cool if that the longer you have Victor on you, eventually like he beats you up and you go down, something like that. Or over time, you get more and more status effects. If you bring him around other people, he can maybe even pounce on them, you know, from head to head or something like that. I don't know. Just holding Victor hostage and keeping him to yourself, it should be a little bit more punishable in my opinion. If not, make it so that they insta-swap. I mean, we spoke about that bug earlier. It felt so smooth and so nice playing the twins for the first time in forever, in my opinion. So insta-swap would be pretty good, or at least make it much, much faster. Next on the list is the Trickster. This one's quite simple. I think main event should be a little bit longer for him. Main event always feels nice when you're using it, but sometimes it's either a little bit too short, and I wish that you can hold it a little bit longer as well. So kind of a bit of both, so that you have a bigger window to use main event when you want to use it, and it's a little bit longer, so that if there's 4 people, you can actually maybe injure all of them and maybe get a few of them down. I think that would be quite nice. Next on the list is Nemesis, and better AI for the zombies would be very optimal. Maybe somehow, some way, if you can like direct the zombies to go somewhere or to crowd a certain area, it would be quite nice, and it could make the zombies a lot more viable. Although admittingly that might be a little bit annoying, and I don't know how people would fully feel about that, but I think it would be cool to not just have them wander in the back of the map or get stuck on an object somewhere. Better AI overall. Next up on the list is Pinhead. Impaling wire should just be BASEKIT in my opinion. I think that's a decent change, and that's pretty much all I got for Pinhead. So yeah, impaling wire, BASEKIT, easy peasy. Next up on the list is the Artist. Woohoo! I think if the birds don't hit anybody and they're pretty much out of the map, they should just disappear. It just sometimes when you're using the power, you can see the birds going on and on and on and on after not hitting anybody, and just make the cooldown for that and everything go faster so you can get back and start using your power immediately. I'm not a big fan of how long it takes to get back to use your power, especially if you miss somebody, so fixing that would be quite nice. Up next on the list is Onryo, and she is one of the weaker killers in the game. Overall, there's a lot of changes that you could make for her, but I think Condemned being more of a threat would be pretty good. Maybe the longer you're in chase, the larger your Condemned builds up, things like that. Or having it so that if someone is condemned and they're next to somebody, it spreads their condemned status, essentially. I think that would make it a lot more interesting and make it a lot more viable for her, and make people actually worry about being condemned. Similarly to how if you're playing against Wesker and you're infected, you're like, okay, I have to go and do this or else I become much, much slower, you know, or he can one-shot me. Onryo should have the same thing with Condemned. It's quite easy to just ignore that mechanic completely and not worry about it a day in your life. Next on the list is the Dredge, and Dredge should have the option to not go into a locker and choose to go into the unlocked ones, I think this would be really good for gameplay. Obviously, you can easily just counter this by locking more lockers, so it's not too much of a big deal, rather than being forced to just go to a locked locker, since survivors can lock one, then lock the other, and I think that's a little strong when going against the dredge. So maybe if you can pick your locker and you just get unlucky and you go to the wrong one, then that's on you, but you still have the option to have that choice. Next on the list is Wesker, and I think this one is very similar to the Blight, just have some collision improvements. I think overall for Leatherface and Blight and even him, collision is just something that they really need to work on, because some of the things you just get stuck on, some of the things you bounce off of, sometimes you don't even grab the survivor when you're right there. And this can be said for the opposite side too. Sometimes like the Wesker's miles away and he still grabs you, you know? So I think fixing that collision and that hitbox would be quite good for him and make it feel smooth on both ends. Obviously latency will play a part in that and things like that. So whatever the server reads would be pretty good. Overall, fix the collision. Finally, the last killer on the list until maybe a few weeks when we get the new killer, the Knight. I can't believe we're already at the end of this video. If you guys been enjoying, make sure you leave a like down below. Let's jump on into the Knight. His circle should be pulsing on the floor. I feel like if the circle goes in and out, having that spotlight kind of feature, it will be much easier to get the survivors to walk into it. As of now, there's so much counterplay to the Knight. And I feel like that's one of the things that survivors easily can avoid, you know? So if the Knight can have a pulsing circle on the floor, so survivors really have to be vigilant on where his minions and guards are at and pay attention to where that circle could potentially be, I think it'll be a lot more intimidating rather than just seeing a big circle on the floor and knowing easily how to avoid them. Or if you don't want to do that, you can go through the list and buff every single one of them individually, which I think would be a little bit too excessive, so I like my circle idea. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is pretty much the list all wrapped up and tied in a bow. I hope you guys did enjoy, and if you did, leave a like down below and subscribe for some more awesome Dead by Daylight videos. Again, a big thank you to Zydax. This entire video was recorded on their gaming laptop. If you're ever in the need of a PC or a laptop, shout out to them, check them out, use code KING on checkout as well. This isn't a paid promotion or anything like that. I'm just very thankful for what they've done for me. And that is pretty much going to wrap it for me. Shout out to our Twitch as well. I know I'm doing a lot of shout outs, but we're getting back into streaming. I would love to see you guys there. As always, I'm the King. I tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fog.